Hello everyone, good morning to one and all ma. Today our topic is fifth unit security. In that fifth unit we can explain the second concept of authentication and authorization methods. First of all, before we are discussing the authentication and authorization methods, what are the major authentication methods in a grid include whatever if we have seen clearly, and then if you have to explain what is authentication and what is authorization, how the authentication performance will be, and then clearly we can explain how the interaction among so multiple parties in sequence of a trust delegation operation. Okay, now we can see first of all, before we are discussing authentication and authorization methods, first of all briefly I can explain what is authentication, what is authorization, what the methods we can use there. Okay, first of all, in major authentication methods in the grid, it includes passwords and public key infrastructure and Kerberos. Okay, so the password is the simplest method to identify a particular user, but the most vulnerable one to use the public key infrastructure. So the public key infrastructure is the most popular method supported by the grid security infrastructure. So to implement a public key infrastructure, we use a trusted third party called the certificate authority. What we have to use there, a trusted third party, what you have to meant to called as a certificate authority, CA. Okay, listen carefully here. So each user applies a unique pair of public and a private key. Okay, listen carefully. What does they do? Each user applies a unique pair of public and a private keys. Here listen carefully. What is the public key? The public keys are issued by the certificate authority by issuing a certificate. Okay, and after recognizing a legitimate user. So this is the concept of a public key. And coming to the private key, the private key is exclusive for each user to use and is unknown to any other users. This is the concept of a private key. So a digital certificate in IEEE X.509 format, it consists of the how the username and user public key and a certificate authority name and a secret signature of the user. So we can elaborate this by using some example, and then if we have to understand clearly. Okay, here if we have to look at this diagram, what does the diagram, how the interact some client and server. The client will give the correct authorized person send the request to that server. The server will be respond to that particular client, yes it is I am, and then if we have to check the correct authenticator or not, the client to server, let us check some ticket, the client or a server. Okay, like this format we have to the client to server, the authenticator, the correct server, correct user or correct authorized person or not. If first of all, if we have to identify by using some private and public keys and by using some trusted third party called a certificate authority. This is the consist of the some username, and by using some user public key and certificate name, authority name, and this is the secret signature of the user. This is the concept of that authentication and authorization method. Correct person is accessing or not. For example, if you go to the bank, at the bank the particular person who are authorized person, that person only access the account. None other than the person will not access that bank account. The correct person is nothing but correct authorized person or not. Okay, correct the person or not. That is nothing but a correct authenticated person or not. That is the concept. If you have to move to the bank, for you, if you are a owner, if you have a account, for example, if you have to open your account for your account, if you are the main authenticated person, okay, that is the example, okay, correct authorized person or not. What exactly I want to say in the sense, authentication refers to the process of identifying a original user of the service or a system. Listen carefully, you are correct authorized person or not. Okay, authentication refers to the process of identifying original user of the service or a system. So the major authentication methods in the grid, what it include? First one, password. In the sense, secret password, the must-and should use the correct authorized person. And then the public key infrastructure. And one more, Kerberos. Okay, what is a password? What is a public key infrastructure? And then what is a Kerberos? What does exactly it mean? Now we can see. The password is the simplest method to identify a particular user, but the most vulnerable one to use the public key infrastructure. So, the public key infrastructure is the most popular method supported by the grid security infrastructure. So, we want to implement the public key infrastructure. We use a trusted third party. It's nothing but what we want to say, certificate authority. Here coming to the one more concept, Kerberos. In the sense, it is a network authentication protocol. What I meant to say now? It is a network authentication protocol. It is designed to provide strong authentication for client or server applications by using a secret key, a cryptography. Okay, so the Kerberos model is shown below diagram. I can explain you clearly. First of all, once again I have to repeat the sentence. What is Kerberos? It is a network authentication protocol. So it is designed to provide a strong authentication for client or server applications by using a secret key, a cryptography. Now we can see what the Kerberos model, how it look like. Okay, this is the Kerberos model, how it look like, shown in the this is the figure, how the representation of Kerberos model. Okay, here look at this diagram. Whatever if you have to send to the server will, the authentication person, what I exactly in the sense, this diagram explanation I have to tell to you. Listen carefully while if you have to if you have able to understand this diagram in a clear way. Okay, now what I am said in the sense, first of all, if we have to take some interaction among multiple parties in sequence of a trust delegation operation by using a Globus toolkit for public key infrastructure. Okay, first of all, what I meant to say in the sense, if you move to the bank, first of all, generate alias a proxy, a credential, whatever it may be, alias something name. Okay, something proxy credential, and then the request and alias proxy credential are sent to the server. The server, what it will do, he will verify the certificate of that alias in the sense that person name, whatever it may be. If you have to verify a certificate of alias, and finally what you have to do, if you have to verify the alias proxy credential, and then send response give to that a client. That is the concept of among a multiple parties in sequence of a trust delegation operation. Okay, this is the concept. If we have to send some request, the server will accept the request and it is correct authorized person or not. First of all, the server will check and verified by using some trusted third party, by using called what I meant to say a certificate authority, and then the server will verify that proxy credential, yes, it's correct, that correct person will send to that certificate to myself. That is the process of authentication The following example you illustrates the use of a public key infrastructure service in a grid environment. So the trust delegation by using the proxy credential in a grid security infrastructure, briefly you can explain in this diagram. Okay, now I can explain what are the two benefits are seen by proxy credential. Okay, two benefits are seen by using a proxy credential. First I meant to say, first a proxy credential is used by its holder, okay, to act on behalf of the original user or whatever it may be, some delegating a party. So a user can temporarily delegate his right to a proxy. The second benefit by using proxy credential, single sign on, it can be achieved with a sequence of credentials passed along the trust chain. So the delegating a party, for example allies, need not verify the remote intermediate parties in a trust chain. Only what I meant to say in the sense, only the difference between the proxy credential and a digital certificate is that a proxy credential is not signed by a certificate authority. So we need to know the relationship among the certificates of certificate authority and allies and proxy credential of allies. So a certificate authority, a certificate is signed first with its own private key. So the second, the certificate allies holds is signed with the private key of a certificate authority. So finally what I meant to say in the sense, proxy credential sent to her proxy, it is signed with her private key. So the procedure delegation rights of allies to whatever it may be the server by using some proxy credential. Nothing. First of all, if we have to generate some allies proxy credential, and then we have to request and allies proxy credential, and later you can verify the certificate of allies, and finally if we have to verify the allies proxy credential, it is a correct authorized person or not. This is the process of authentication method. Okay, and coming to the second one, authorization for access control. What you have to control the access control by using authorization. Before we are discussing some authorization for access control, first of all, if we have to explain what is authorization exactly. Okay, authorization is a process, it's or whatever it may be mechanism. Authorization is a process or mechanism to exercise access control of shared resources. So this is the concept. The authorization is nothing but a process to exercise access control of that shared resources. So the decisions can be made either at access point of service or at a centralized place. Typically what I meant to say in the sense, resource is a host, okay, that provides processes and storage for services deployed on it, based on a set predefined policies or one more rules, and resource may enforce access for local services. Okay, what I meant to say in the sense, the control at local point of service based on a set of predefined policies or whatever it may be, some rules, the resource may enforce access for that local services. What is the central authority? What exactly the central authority in the sense? It is a special entity which is capable of issuing and revoking policies of access rights, and it is granted to a remote access. What I meant to say now, it is a special entity which is capable of issuing and revoke again the policies of whatever it may be of access should be right that granted to a remote accesses. Okay, so the authority can be classified into 3 categories. How many categories, ma? The authority can be classified into 3 categories. First one is attribute, and second one is policy authorities, and the third one is identity authorities. What exactly attribute says? Attribute authorities issue attribute assertions. Okay, only attribute assertions they issued. And then coming to the policy authorities, what it issue authorization policies. What policies it issues? Authorization policies. And coming to the third category, that is nothing but identity authorities. The name exactly what it says, identity authorities. It issues some certificates. What it issues, ma? Identity authorities issue a certificate. So mainly what I meant to say in the sense, the authorization server makes the final authorization a decision. Okay, this is the concept of authorization for access control. Now we can see the 3 authorization models. What we can see, ma? The 3 authorization models. Ma, sorry, this diagram or not clearly. I have to read and explain each and everything. You don't bother about that. Okay, now listen carefully, ma. There are 3 authorization models. Okay, what is the 3 authorization models subjects? Now I can explain. The first one, a subject push model. The second one, resource pulling model, and the third one is authorization agent model. First one, what I said to you in the sense, look at this diagram, otherwise we can't able to understand this diagram. First of all, in square box, what I meant in the sense, authorization authority, and then here the arrow will come left side and the arrow will go right side. Okay, arrow will come left side is nothing but number 1, ma. It go this side, and number 2. Listen carefully. This is nothing but a subject. Subject in the sense, whatever the user they used. Okay, resource is nothing but some mission. Listen carefully. The diagram what explain you in the sense, the figure represents you authorization model for subject a push model. What, ma'am? Subject a push model. What the diagram explains you in the sense, the subject is the user and the resource refers to the mission side. So the subject push model is shown in the figure. The user conducts a handshake with the authority first. Listen carefully. The user conducts handshake with the authority first, and then with the resource site. Okay, nothing but mission in a sequence. What that the resource pulling a model puts the resource as shown in the below figure you. Listen carefully. Yes, the resource pulling model puts the resource as shown in the below figure. Which figure? The second figure. Look at this figure, all of you. That figure what you have to explain in the sense, listen carefully. The authorization model, resource pulling a model. What model, ma'am? Resource pulling a model. Here the first square box, authorization authority. Here you have to look at this diagram. Here the numbering will be given 2 3. This nothing but 1 4. Here the above diagram 4 3 ma. Listen carefully. 1 2 3, below 3, and then above 4. The first diagram. Okay. And coming to the second diagram, the authorization model, the figure represents you resource pulling model. What that is nothing but, I want to say now, listen. The user subject, the subject is nothing but user. The user checks the resource first, then a resource contacts its authority to verify a request, and as well as authority authorizes. Yet what I meant to say, at step 3, listen carefully. At step 3, I mentioned here in second diagram 3. At step 3, finally, a resource accepts or rejects the request from the subject at step 4. Here, look at this. 4 will be there. resource to a subject. Okay, and then what I meant to say in the sense, the authorization agent model puts the authority in middle, as shown in the below figure. Look at this, as shown in the last figure. Okay, here first of all subject 1 4 and then authorization authority, and then 2 3 and last one a resource. What this last diagram explains you, the figure explains you, the subject here, first listen carefully, the subject check with authority at step 1. Okay, and authority makes decisions on access of the requested resources. Okay, listen carefully, and authority makes decisions on access of the requested resources. So the authorization process is complete at step 3 and 4. Okay, step 3 and 4 the authorization process is complete. In the reverse direction, look at this diagram. In the reverse diagram, what the figure represents you, in the sense the figure illustrates you authorization model is nothing but authorization agent model. What ma'am? Agent model. This is the concept of the figure explanation of 3 authorization models. What they explain here, listen carefully all of you, otherwise they can't able to understand the concepts. The subject first diagram, the subject push model is shown at the top diagram. Okay, and then the resource pulling model puts the resource in the middle, that is the second diagram, and then the authorization agent model puts the authority in the middle. This is the last diagram. What I explained, the figure illustrates you, first figure illustrates you subject push model, and second figure illustrates you resource pulling model, and third figure represents you authorization agent. Here we can explain the 3 authorization models. Subject is nothing but push model, and coming to the resource, that is nothing but a pulling model, and the third one, that is nothing but authorization agent model. Okay, this is the concept of the diagram what I explained you. This is very very important question, what the question will be, briefly explain about authentication and authorization methods. How many models include in authorization, they ask like the question like that. Okay, this is the concept of a second concept of authentication and authorization model. Okay ma, up to now if we have to understand the concept ma, the concept of authentication and authorization methods. In Telugu what I say in the sense, listen carefully, the person is correct or not, who are authorizing, who are accessing whatever the details in our bank sectors and our company sector or our business sectors, the correct person, the correct authentication person are accessing or not the details, what exactly they send to the client to the server or server to the client by using some trusted third party, that is nothing but certificate authority. And we are using here a public key infrastructure, and we are using some private keys, public keys, encryption, decryption, cryptography. These are some technologies by using security. What exactly the security, in the sense to provide a security to the bank sector or business purposes sector or company sector, wherever market trends sector, the security is must and should need ma. Why? Because of not safety. Okay, that's why if you want to provide some security, yeah. Okay, that is the concept of security. Of second concept, or last previous video we listened the first concept, that is nothing but trust models for grid security environment. What are the trust models if you have seen in previous video? In coming to this video, we can learn about authentication and authorization methods. Very very important questions, these 2 concepts in first unit. Okay ma, up to now, thank you ma. Okay, if you have any doubts regarding the subject, can you please contact me.